So ever since I made my video about the dark gold selling underworld of classic WoW, a number of people have come forth with even more shocking information that will make my original video look as innocent as Sesame Street. This rabbit hole goes much deeper than you think. We've barely scratched the surface of just how disgusting the RMT world is. I've been lucky enough to 1. Interview a long-term gold farmer and seller who was in the business for 10 years and has a very eye-opening perspective on the industry with a lot of insider information. 2. A gold selling website themselves agreed to do a written interview, meaning they didn't get on voice with me, but they did write answers to my questions. And this has provided a keen insight into how the website and the kingpins of the industry enact their enterprise. And on top of all this, some of the biggest GDKP group leaders have come forth to reveal even more shocking truths than what I researched in my original video. The pots are even bigger than what I thought, and it's gotten to a point where people are just PayPaling real money to GDKP leaders instead of sending gold because gold in the game has become so worthless and deflated. But for now, grab a beer and some popcorn because it's time to fully reveal the inside life of a gold seller. The most interesting part of interviewing a gold seller was learning about how the hustle has evolved over time. Red Mage, who agreed to do the interview with me, started gold selling in the original Burning Crusade expansion. Originally he had a fairly basic factory job. He also inherited a cat from somebody who was too ill to look after the cat, and the cat itself had a number of health issues. I swear this is relevant because he had to pay for large vet bills for the cat. So he decided to turn to farming gold on his paladin and then selling it for real money to cover the costs.
But yeah, that's basically how I got my start, is to cover a significant medical expense for an animal. Roughly after the first payment deposited, my brother looked at it and he's like, how did you pull, $420 something in less than a week? And I'm like, oh, I just farmed a whole bunch of gold on my paladin. He's like, why are you not doing that as a job instead of working at that awful factory?
But he quickly realised that he could actually make more in real life money selling WoW gold than working his day job. $427 in under a week for farming a little gold on WoW on a single character isn't a bad amount of money if you think about it. Originally all he had to do was farm RFD for blue gear, then disenchant it for radiant shards. Back in the day, gold was much more expensive than it is now, very similar to the original classic WoW. The gold was pricey. I know of a few people who farmed gold, got over like 10 grand and went and bought a car.
There was the old Razor Fen Down dungeon. I could run the entire thing in about 6 minutes on the paladin, kill off all the enemies and walk out with between 5 and 8 radiant shards. And on the hour basis at the beginning of Burning Crusade, that came out to a little over $22 an hour.
So back in TBC, you could make $22 per hour. Adjust that for inflation, and that's $32 per hour. And that's just on one character. He moved on to better farms and never actually used a bot to farm gold. He's been doing this for 10 years without getting banned. His theory is because that he played the game like a normal player and only sold a portion of his gold. That's the reason why he didn't look as dodgy to Blizzard and they didn't ban him. Originally he sold his gold to a website called MMO Pin.
At first I went through a company called MMO Pin, MMO Pin I think it was called. It was a small company that was actually centralized here in the US. It was run by a grandmother and her grandson that lived in Montana. I was selling them gold for about $22 per thousand, and they were selling it for about $25 to $40.
Then he moved on to websites like IGE and then IGEX when they rebranded. Now MMOPin also had a contributor system. The more gold you farmed, the more points you got on the website, and then you could actually redeem that to buy actual game keys. There was also a forum and group chats where people collaborated their strategies on gold farming. The farmers were largely from South Vietnam. These were the Giga Chad farmers who knew all the best strategies to farm gold in the game, because back in these days you couldn't just find all the information out on YouTube.
The more important part of that was the contributor forum helped people find different kinds of gold farms to help out with their current situation, chats, group farms. I did farm with a lot of people from not Taiwan, South Vietnam, I believe it was. Barely spoke any licks of English, but those guys were just fantastic.
By the way guys, this video has been an immense amount of work. It's taken me a good month to finally get this video completed, so I would really appreciate it if you did subscribe to the channel. I also like to give back to people who do subscribe to the channel, so if you want to know how to remaster the graphics in Classic WoW for the Hardcore WoW launch with a really clean UI also, or you want a spreadsheet with the best WoW and add-ons for parsing for every single class raiding in Wrath of the Lich King Classic, then all you have to do is check out the description of my subscriber only trailer. We then went to talk about how much gold he was making at his absolute peak and what the value was.
It depended on expansion. During Wrath of the Lich King, I moved around 300,000 gold per month at about between $20 and $23 per thousand. So about between, I want to say between $2,000 to $4,500 per month, depending on when I moved it and who I moved it with.
So again, adjusted for inflation, this is $3,000 to $6,000 per month. We also began to talk about how the value of gold began to deflate massively towards the end of Wrath of the Lich King. This was largely because more and more people like Red Mage were getting in on the hustle and selling gold, and therefore the gold had to keep on getting undercut. It actually deflated to $15 per 1,000 gold at the end of Wrath, and by the end of Cataclysm it was $7, and then by the time WoD turned up, you were lucky to actually get $1.50 per hour of farming gold. But there was another problem in the gold selling world that was making the gold so cheap, and it's interesting to see how gold farming and selling has evolved because of this practice. Obviously, I'm talking about botting. The first upsurge of bots really happened during the Glider days. This was the first good bot that you could buy and make a decent amount of gold with. It was so good that Blizzard actually decided to file a lawsuit against the bot owner.
Blizzard shot themselves in the foot. They managed to lose their case against WoW Glider, but they managed to keep the injunction on the sale of WoW Glider. The judge that was presiding over the case obviously had stock in Blizzard, so it made no sense he even had the power to do that, but whatever. The guy who owned WoW Glider said, you know what, it'd be a shame if this source code got sold out to somebody, and that's exactly what happened. So now you have an incredibly effective and powerful bot towards the end of Cataclysm that not only was undetectable because it ran below what the WoW Warden systems could detect it at, but readily available and being distributed under different names under many different companies.
So Blizzard once again boomeranged themselves in the face. They cut off the head of the Hydra and more heads grew in its place in the form of more bot companies. When Glider started, they had around 20k users, but by the end of the court case, they had way over 100,000. So the court really didn't achieve anything apart from growing the World of Warcraft botting scene. Glider was incredibly difficult to detect because it worked underneath Blizzard's Warden system. Now, Blizzard's Warden system works like this. If your account gets suspected of botting, it will randomly download itself secretly while you are playing the game. So an actual program will be downloaded onto your computer while you have the World of Warcraft client open, and then this scans your processor log to see what other programs you are running. But the issue is that many bots are totally undetectable by Blizzard's Warden system, especially today because they haven't really made any effort to improve the system's ability to detect bots. The Warden system worked quite well originally. It was very vicious and effective at detecting bots, but the issue is that the Warden system was also too invasive on players' privacy. So to reduce the risk of legal issues, they had to dial back Warden's detective ability. bot software runs very deep on your computer below the operating system so that the warden can't detect it in the processing log. And as far as I understand it, the warden system cannot go deeper into your PC without legal issues. So warden will never be good enough alone to detect bot software, and this is why GMs are needed so badly in the game. But obviously, as we know, Blizzard laid off more than 1,000 GM and support staff. This is why it takes so long for GMs to respond to tickets in-game and why bots are running rampant in the game. As we know from the recent Reddit Ask Me Anything that I talked about in the previous video, bots are able to run for months without getting banned, and are normally only picked up by the infrequent, let's be honest, big ban waves. Red Mage actually came quite close to getting banned because he had a close encounter with a GM, something that just doesn't happen anymore.
There was a GM occasionally turning invisible, following me around Wintergrasp, and I stopped and I looked up into the air where I knew he just reappeared and disappeared from, and I said, "Okay, come out." And he popped in, and I'm like, "Well, why are you following me around?" He's like, I suspect you of botting. And I'm like, "Can a bot do this?" And I flew over and I saw an alliance, another alliance. And I ordered my kill squad to kill him because he was competing with me. They killed him, and he's like, "Oh, you're not a bot." And I'm like, "No, Sherlock."
And this is what is currently missing in the game. GMs actually doing stuff. Red Mage knows how to find and detect bots. He can go anywhere in the game and find one within 10 minutes. He then told me an interesting story about somebody exploiting and getting away with it in Cataclysm very badly.
And he was a level 7 orc that was teleport mining around zones in Cataclysm mining at level 7. He did not get banned using this teleport exploit until the end of Warlords of Draenor.
So this guy was teleporting between mining nodes for about 5 years and he didn't even get banned. And this is how bad it was back in the days of Mr. Pandaria. Imagine how bad the situation is now with even less GMs. We also know that the PvP scene in Wrath of the Lich King Classic is totally corrupted with hacking tools and win trading, and nothing is being done about it. We'll make an exclusive episode about that in the future also. One question people are wondering is, how do people avoid getting banned by selling and buying gold? Well, to be honest, it's actually very simple. There's a reason why Red Mage sold gold for 10 years without getting banned. 1. You do it smartly. You don't trade a truckload of gold on a low-level character at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Secondly, you do it on a high-level character, so it actually looks like a genuine transaction of gold. 3, as I've mentioned, you can get a guild bank to effectively launder the gold. It's funny how this worked 15 years ago, and it still works today. The last option is to trade items of value to then sell on the auction house. This is the most safe way, but obviously there's a risk of not being able to sell the items or the price adjusting, but what normally the gold seller would do is any gold that they didn't make by selling the items cheaper, they would just send at a later date. One thing I've been personally very curious about is how these gold sellers stay on the right side of the law when it comes to paying the taxman. And is it even against the law? Well, just from doing some basic research, it isn't actually against the law to sell in-game currency in a video game. So Red Mage was able to just set himself up as a self-employed person, do a self-assessment form, and you're good to go as long as you pay your taxes. Some people, however, decided not to do this. So the strategy is to make a fake company and set up this company in a different country where the US can't legally operate. If you think about it, it's probably very difficult for the taxman to tax a gold seller. They are selling a digital product, it doesn't actually have a physical form, and on top of this, it's in a virtual make-up-believe world. Secondly, the world is run by boomers who struggle to even understand what World of Warcraft is. A good real-life example of this from my personal life is when I have to write what I do for a living when getting car insurance. Strangely enough, YouTuber or content creator isn't in the database. The company that Red Mage originally sold gold to got into a lot of trouble for evading tax by making a shell company.
Shell companies? Oh, absolutely. MMOPIN got, the first company I worked with, they got in trouble with both the IRS and the Federal Trade Commission for doing such a thing. They created a shell company in I believe it was South Vietnam, to offload most of their sales to. They got busted for it because they were operating out of Montana, and they had a situation where both the IRS got on their and then the Federal Trade Commission got a raid of their servers in the US that were, maintaining their website. And within like a week, despite their backup servers, within a week, that company was entirely gone. The last I heard, the person who was operating that website did I think about 3 years for tax evasion. I don't think the grandma did anything because she was like 85 and they just didn't want to deal with her health problems.
This company also had a bot farming enterprise working in-house, but back in these days, most of their gold did actually come from manual farmers. As the price of gold began to depreciate, the gold selling companies had to look for new strategies to get gold, and this is when the practice of keylogging entered the game. This actually happened to me personally a few times back in the day. It's the reason why the Blizzard Authenticator became a thing. What would happen is, first of all, you get an email that looked like it was from Blizzard, and just from opening the email, this would install the keylogger onto your PC. Either that or you buy a game key from a dodgy website, and this would then track what you are typing when you log into your World of Warcraft account or other accounts, and then that's it, game over. They have full access to your account.
A certain point after like the gold started hitting down about the $5 mark per thousand, a lot of companies started realizing it's much easier just to go fishing and see who they can catch and loot their account for everything they're worth than it was to, just have some regular dude working at a desk job farming gold all day. But gold stealing was absolutely a problem. It still is a problem to this day, although the botting is more of an issue than just flat theft now.
Although Red Mage didn't actually bot himself, he had many contacts in the industry who did on a large scale. Pretty much from the dawn of time, you've always been able to run a bot consistently for 2 to 3 months before you get banned. Now, Red Mage's theory on this is that Blizzard have always done this intentionally to farm a little sub-money on top of the money needed to buy the game, and furthermore to increase the amount of money that they can make in the future with the WoW token. He also confirmed my theory that gold farming companies will reverse engineer the bots that you can find online with their own software engineering staff, and therefore no longer have to pay the monthly fee for the bots on other websites. It's pretty simple basically. They can employ a freelance software engineer to reverse engineer the bot, and there you go, they have their own bot that they can operate in-house without any fees. Towards the end of the interview, we talked about retail WoW and how the WoW token in the long term has changed the gold selling scene. Has it truly reduced and ruined the RMT process like Blizzard claims it does? Well, to nobody's surprise, it hasn't. Okay, not only can you actually now buy game time cheaper by purchasing WoW Gold on third-party websites than buying a WoW token to effectively play the game for half the price, it has also severely reduced the real money value of gold. Now 300,000 gold costs $11 on retail WoW. That's a lot of cheddar for such a small amount of real money, and it's the direction that Wrath of Lich King Classic is now heading because they've got the WoW token in the game. All that really needs to happen is the gold sellers now have to undercut the WoW token, and therefore they have to run more bots on their PC to continue making the same amount of profits. And now with virtual machines, this honestly just isn't a problem for gold sellers at all. They just have to make a few changes to increase the amount of gold they are farming. It doesn't deter gold farmers in any shape or form.
Effectively, Blizzard is setting by using the token, setting a price minimum, and all the bots have to do is be below that price minimum.
At this point, it is just painfully obvious that the WoW token is in the game purely to make Blizzard more profit. And what's even more stupid is now that they're making more money with the WoW token, obviously more profit, they're then not spending this profit on GM support.
People will argue that, oh, well, Blizzard's technically not selling gold. They absolutely are. There's no way for a player or a person to track if they're putting tokens up there themselves. We don't know the algorithm it uses to calculate its price. We do not know a lot of factors in how that is operating.
So I don't know about you guys, but it really feels to me like Blizzard barely care about fixing RMT issues in the game. My theory is that they dedicate a very small budget for game master support, especially for Wrath Classic. They are only doing the bare minimum to ensure that the situation doesn't become ludicrous to the point where bots never get banned and the economy goes out of control. But honestly, I would argue that we're already halfway there. Bot accounts are able to farm for months and normally only get picked up by these big ban waves. And it's got me thinking, why on earth are these big ban waves not happening once a week instead of only every few months? If it's a financial issue, then Blizzard just need to come correct and spend the money to employ GMs to find the bots and get them banned. The shorter a bot's life, the less profit they will make. They have to consistently ban bots fast enough in order to make the business unprofitable on a large scale. And then we'll just be left with idiots who use bots for personal use rather than companies running multiple computers with hundreds of bots purely for the sake of making a real-world financial profit. It's also extremely cringe when they announce in a blue post that they've had an account banning wave. It's like a child trying to get approval for a little scribble they've done in class to get stuck on the fridge. Like, off, bro, seriously. They shouldn't be banning accounts once every few months and expecting us to be impressed. They should be doing big ban waves weekly to purge them out of the world
of Warcraft.
In fact, I don't think a bot should be able to function for longer than a few days without getting banned. They do these blue posts to get a pat on the back from us, but honestly, it's more of an embarrassment for them because they make themselves look like clowns. Fair enough, their warden system does seem to have a limitation due to its legal issues, but I'm going to remind you of a little story that I've talked about on the channel before when I played a community Pokemon MMO. Now, I was botting in this game. Alright, I admit it, get your pitchforks out. What I was trying to do is farm EP values on the little Paris Pokemon in Mount Moon. In fact, I wasn't even botting, I was actually just using Razor Synapse macros. And after doing this for about 20 minutes, I was automatically flagged for botting and had to type in a captcha to verify that I was human. I don't see why Blizzard can't do something similar. Why can't they develop some kind of AI software that detects when you're doing something sus in-game? For example, a player these days very likely won't instance farm the same dungeon over and over for longer than 2 hours. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if less than 1% of players right now actually farm gold these days. So when an account is farming gold, it's already pretty suspicious. Make those accounts verify that they are human, or once they've done it multiple times, a GM then knows that that account is human and then they'll stop doing it. Or, a GM will already be able to see when an account isn't a bot account. Because if they've been actively doing normal player stuff for years like raiding, then it shouldn't really need human verification. But if an account has done nothing but farm Botanica from the day of its conception, from the day that they paid for the level 70 boost, then obviously that's suspicious. There should be a way of automatically detecting whether an account has done nothing but farm golds? Don't know why I said that. Nothing but farm gold for a few days. And then a GM should be monitoring that account to see if it's a bot. Blizzard seriously need to invest in AI technology to help them in their fight against bots and actually employ more GMs for human verification, especially before gold farming companies start investing in AI technology, because they definitely are. Another big issue is how RMT selling isn't against the law. Hopefully there will be progress made in the real world to introduce laws and restrictions on the practice of RMT. This would make it harder for the industry to function, which would be a great deterrent, but the problem is, how do you make the practice in any shape or form illegal when it basically has no direct negative side effects on the real world? It only really affects the in-game world, and who cares about that in a courtroom full of boomers? Maybe an argument could be made that there is negative side effects in the real world for consumers of video games, but anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Be sure not to miss my next episode of Strangleform Vice, where we'll be going over my interview with an actual gold selling website. Anyway, my name is Matt Goblin, and until my next video, ciao.